Dash. We've been at this almost a decade. We've learned that it's hard to break through the inertia to even get on people's radar. Some say we must complete platform, that once built, they will come. Others say that we must prioritize marketing. Wouldn't it be nice to know a bit more about our prospective users, to have some data, so that we can build products they demand, and so that we can more effectively communicate with them? In a recent Why We Build episode, we did consider some data, but that was only representative of those living within the political boundaries of the US, and we're keen to see Dash used everywhere. It's expensive to do a robust global survey. Fortunately, we live in the information age. We can piggyback on the data collected by others. In this case, a survey spearheaded by Consensus, a blockchain software technology company, in collaboration with global polling firm YouGov. Their survey polled over 15,000 respondents in 15 nation states. What data did they accrue? What is most relevant for Dash? Apparently, awareness of crypto is pretty high, 92% overall. That's surprisingly good penetration. As John Sokovich points out, awareness is the first step in what marketers call a sales funnel. Without awareness, there is no crypto adoption. One might think that it's people in so-called advanced economies who have the most familiarity with crypto, but that's not the case. Respondents in Japan claim the least crypto familiarity, while respondents in Nigeria claim the most. This grasp of crypto by Nigerians is underscored in another question. They were by far the most in the know about what a blockchain is. And one last point, though 92% is indeed high, only half of respondents claim to understand it. This brings us to a related question, the top 3 perceived barriers to entering the crypto ecosystem. The most selected barrier was, the market is too volatile, too risky. Though respondents in places with volatile mediums of exchange, like Argentina and South Africa, selected this option at a much lower rate. Other top selected barriers were concerns about scams and difficulty getting up to speed and understanding the technology. This latter group of perceived barriers, and the lack of understanding around crypto touched on in the previous question, is something Dash, almost alone in the cryptosphere, has long identified as a hurdle to address.
And so now what we're trying to do is fix ease of use and adoption. And this brings us to Dash evolution.
It's why the When Evo meme continues to have such traction. By bringing to market the functionality promised by Dash evolution, the aforementioned concerns will be nullified. This is an area in which we can excel, and in which we must excel. Moving on. Fully 40% of respondents reported previously or currently owning crypto, with the greatest percentages in Nigeria, South Africa, Vietnam, India, and the US. The lowest percentages, conversely, being in Japan, France, Germany, and the UK. When asked how likely are you to invest in crypto in the next year, respondents in the 2 African nation-states surveyed, Nigeria and South Africa, identified as being the most likely. Last on the list, those who reported the least likelihood of buying crypto were, surprise surprise, those in Japan, France, Germany, and the UK. It seems to be part of a pattern. The old world, old Europe, is falling behind. In the report, this sentiment is underscored in the passage, globally, cryptocurrency is seen as the future of money. However, European countries are more likely to associate it with negative aspects. The Consensus survey had some other relevant questions about data privacy, views toward legacy financial systems, ownership of NFTs, and more. Ultimately, it concluded by stating that respondents wanted to move from being users to builders. So, how can we better position Dash to be a tool of empowerment, to gain more adoption? Firstly, we need to give regulators none of our bandwidth. If we try to appease legacy actors, we will stymie our own potential, and we will never succeed. Secondly, we should look not to the old world, where crypto ownership is lowest, and where crypto is viewed with suspicion, but look instead to the places where crypto ownership is the highest, and where crypto is viewed positively. The markets I'm describing have many more possible customers, both in current per capita crypto use and in raw absolute numbers. But, you may argue, there is more wealth, whether measured in gross GDP or purchasing power parity, in those places I've said are falling behind. And yes, I would agree with you on that point, but I'd respond with a question. What did we enter this space to do? To try to persuade someone who is living relatively comfortable, whose existing payment systems work all right, and who may have a disdain for what we have to offer? Or to connect with those who have demonstrated not just an affinity for crypto, but an understanding and use of crypto, and who are eager to find a better money? Again, if we consider the sales funnel, we can see that people in that latter camp have moved well into the funnel. If Dash's attributes make it the best medium of exchange, and if pending releases will help it stand out even further, then there's no reason why crypto users shouldn't have a preference for it, and ultimately become advocates who take it upon themselves to inform people in their sphere of the superior product. Dash adoption will occur where real-world use is most needed. Those are the places we should focus.
Good day. Welcome to Incubator Weekly. How's it going, Ryan? How's it going, AJ?
Good. Thank you.
Good.
AJ was up all night, and so was I.
Okay.
I was up
not
with
up all night.
a boy that had an ear infection.
Oh,
But I'm not. And AJ was up coding, so.
okay.
Investigating.
With both
I
of
did a
you
little coding
perhaps
too.
being a little more tired than usual, I don't know, we don't need to expand beyond it, but I do want to say that I had not seen the data in the newsreel before that said that concerns about volatility are, what was that, over twice the concerns of ease of use?
Oh
Let's
yeah,
think
nobody
about it.
likes volatility. Everybody likes stability. Everybody likes safety. So you got to get people what they want.
Okay, grandma cares more about volatility than she does ease of use.
Although I don't know, sometimes those. I'd have to look at the source of that poll, but sometimes those polls are made to convey a point rather than, they're making news rather than reporting news. They're trying to make you think that volatility is important rather than reporting that volatility is important. Sometimes you have to look at the source.
Take a closer look. That would be nice. I'd like to do that at some point in the future, Ryan. Prior to that, however, we'd like to speak with AJ today about testing Dash platform, something I never thought that AJ would do, and so I'm quite keen to dig in. Let's start.
That's how I got into this mess in the first place. Was Ryan sent me to the dash.org webpage and told me to go get a merchant thingy installed.
That's right. I remember watching that video that you made.
That wasn't Dash platform though. That was just normal payments.
Right.
Well, but what I ended up going through was Dash platform because that's what was in the documentation for the search terms for how to get the payments set up.
Yep.
So
yeah. Tell us about how you're going to test it then.
Or give us a summary of your stream if you don't know where to start last night. Because you started testing last night.
So I haven't really understood what this thing is on the server side, and I was assuming that it was a masternode with some extra configuration, and then maybe there was actually a separate server. And when I was looking at the documentation for set up an Evo node, it seemed like all I needed to do is set up a masternode, which that is a little bit challenging. I don't think that we have an Evo node faucet set up yet. So the faucets just give you 1,000. But if you get it wrong, if you accidentally enter in the wrong code, because I just tried, because masternode is the old code for 1,000. So I just said, oh, okay, I'll try Evo node. Well, that failed. And so then I ended up only getting 12 T-dash rather than 4,000 or 1,000 T-dash. And then, of course, my IP was blocked. And so I couldn't do it anymore. But I was able to post I posted in a couple of different Discords, and somebody sent me the 4,000. So that was taken care of.
Well, I think there probably is a code. I wouldn't be surprised if it's HPMN or something like that. But I do seem to recall that there is a code for getting 4,000 tests.
And maybe that was in the testnet documentation. I have to double check that, because I was primarily looking at the Evo node documentation, not the testnet documentation, because I'm thinking of it as not how do I connect to testnet. I'm thinking of it as how do I run an Evo node, and then I know that I'm going to switch a flag to say dash testnet. Like that's not where my concern is. Anyway, so there was that. And in the documentation, it does show, it seems to be a little conflicting, because it shows that you can set port numbers in the ProReg TX, which basically that's the message that you broadcast to the normal blockchain to let, it's almost like a memo. In fact, it might be a memo. I'm not sure how it's encoded, but it's a signed message with a bunch of fields that represent parameters for your masternode, like what the payment split is, who's the owner, who's the operator, who's the voter, by key address, what port that different services are being run on, etc. So I was a little bit confused. I didn't actually get to the point where I could check it out to make sure, but so I'm working with JoJo and another guy, Ryan, that I don't think anybody else here has heard anything of, but on a lower cost, basically a crappier VPS, that is better for doing more with less. But it's like we didn't buy a $30,000 server. We bought $700 servers, and we're basically taking the cheapest option at every turn so that we can maximize what we're able to offer. At least at the scale that we're working at, because at a certain scale, it actually becomes cheaper to have the $20,000 server because of the price per watt stuff that starts to happen when you have thousands of or millions of customers. But anyway, so we on that system, if I can use whatever ports I want to use, then I don't have to pay. IP addresses are actually really expensive. That's like it's a very centralized system. The IP system is not decentralized like the domain system. It doesn't. Anyway, so I was just saying, okay, I'm going to reuse an IP address and I'll just switch up the ports. But then later in the documentation, it sounds like you can't do that. So I'm not sure, but that's on my wish list. Is we should be able to pick whatever ports we want, and whatever is consuming the ProReg TX message should obey the ports that are in the ProReg TX message without discrimination. Because that allows us to be more internety.
So would you submit that like as a pull request? Is that something that you think it would be fairly easy to incorporate?
I don't think that's not my priority right now. My priority is to get platform up and running as DCG has built it. And my understanding from other developers in the community, such as XKCD, is that we can set up each of the components as standalone systems that interact with each other and not have to use Docker for our orchestration. That's my understanding, and I would like you to try to get that set up in a way that is very, very simple for anybody to set up. I think XKCD has probably already done this, and I would like to see you do this as well and see if the documentation is sufficient for that. So we're starting. I want to use this quarter to do as much as we can on platform testing now that it's, it was running for several days and thousands of blocks successfully just recently. And right now, I think the status is that DCG is tearing testnet platform down again to roll it back to an earlier version to test how it will, if it will successfully hard fork from version 19 to version 20. And that's an important test because that's what mainnet is on right now. So you have to test that transition from version 19 to version 20 so that we know that when we actually do ask people to do this on mainnet, that there's not going to be a problem. So that's what they're going to be doing. I think it's going to take about 3 days. So after that's done, and if that's successful, then I'd like to jump back on to this testing and try to get all the components set up. So for example, AJ, GroveDB is a standalone database that's used in platform, but it's not a database that is exclusively only to be used in platform. It could be a database that you used for anything. It's a key value store database. So I would guess that
from Facebook, yeah,
you would be able to set up as a standalone system. But along with that, like TenderDash and DAPI,
so TenderDash was one of the things that I was trying to get installed. So this is another thing on my wish list. The documentation needs to live with the code, and we have hard forked these things, not soft forked these things. the READMEs need to get updated for each of these projects to be like a typical everyday README that you're going to find on anything on GitHub. That's like, this is our brand, which is Dash. Our brand is not Ethereum. Our brand is not Tendermint. Our brand is not Bitcoin. You know, most of our documentation, and it's been this way the whole time I've known about Dash, most of our documentation says Bitcoin at the top or some other brand. It doesn't say Dash. And it doesn't have the steps of how to actually build or use it. So this is probably the top item on my wish list, is just delete all the READMEs, because they're meaningless, and start from scratch with, here's the build section, like here's the install section, that how do you install it from a package? So that means that there has to be a package, because a lot of these don't have package. Like Tendermint, there's no package for it. There's no release for it. But where it was forked from, all the code to make the releases is still there. We just need to update with our API token and our release URL, which is on GitHub. So GitHub's already handled all that for us. The Tendermint, where it's forked from, has already handled that. So the wish list is, we need releases. The README needs to say, okay, here's how you install from the release. And then it needs to say, here's how you build this.
For each component.
For each of the components.
And Ryan and or AJ, I don't really know what you mean when you say your main goal for the next quarter is to parse out components and make them not need Docker. So I have no idea what that means. Please tell me.
I'll take a stab. Docker is essentially a tool that allows you to set a certain environment for your setup. So like you tell it which version of Node you're using, which version of all the components, and it has like a separate standalone environment, and it pulls it all together. So you don't have the problem of, well, this setup doesn't work on Windows, or this setup doesn't work on Mac, but it works on Linux.
And this is purely for testing purposes. This is not like mainnet stuff we're saying.
No, it's mainnet. It's what Dashmate is.
Mainnet. Dashmate is the tool that does this orchestration using Docker. And then, but a lot of developers, AJ included and XKCD included, they like to have the components separate, and then just running the right version of each component will make them work well together, instead of using Docker to do that.
So this is the problem with Docker. Docker is like, you have your leg chopped off and somebody gives you a Band-Aid. And that's the way that it's used. That's because I like what Docker actually is, what it's supposed to be, what it's meant for, is a phenomenal idea. But what happens is the concept of works on my machine. There's this old meme of, well, it works on my machine. Well, we can't send your machine to the customer. What Docker allows you to do is essentially take an image of your machine and send the image of your machine to the customer. And the problem with this is that it doesn't solve what's actually wrong. What's actually wrong is that there's not a documented process with releases in order to produce the working environment. And so people just, when they kind of sort of figure it out, whatever ended up working, they just ship that as a Docker image. But then if you were to ask anybody on the team, hey, how does this thing work? Nobody knows except for the person who set it up. So you have the same problem of like this fragile environment that nobody understands, that like it's reproducible, because as long as you have that original Docker image, you can replicate it as many times as you need to. But if you need to change it, or if you need to test something in isolation, nobody knows how to do it because the documentation was never written. Instead, it's like, well, the Docker file works, so we don't need documentation. And that's kind of that's an industry-wide problem, is that this wonderful tool was created for solving, it was created to solve the problem with Python. Python has many different versions and they're very incompatible. So 2.7 might not be compatible with 2.8, which is like most things, anything in the 2 cycle will be compatible. So 2.2 is compatible with 2.1, 2.3 is
Skip
compatible
that.
with 2.2.
Yeah, suffice it to say, we currently have a Docker problem.
Well, yeah, and I don't have a specific dog in this fight. I'm not anti-Docker. I'm not pro-Docker. I know enough. I've been in the development space enough to know that some developers really have strong opinions both for and against, and there's no reason that we should alienate one side or the other. We should have it work both ways so that any developer that wants to get started with platform, they can do it their way. They can do it the way that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, and Docker is great. Docker is absolutely wonderful as long as it's not being used as a substitute for a documented process with packaged releases.
Right, and so this is, AJ, this is why I want you on this project, because you have a project, and maybe you could pull it up on a screen share if you wanted to. You have a project called Web Install, which does this process, which is...
That's not the one, Pete. But I'm giving you the link right now.
Okay, so Web Install is basically a system, and you can correct me here, but Web Install is a system where if you have some kind of software that you want to set up, and it's web-based software, then you can set up any package. And so
it's not web-based software. No, it has nothing to do with being web-based. The install file is web-based, and it will use releases from various sources. So from GitHub. So here, for example, DashPay does release -d as a package on GitHub releases. Now, it doesn't have to be GitHub releases. It could be a variety of release systems. Or it could be a custom release system like what Node and Go have, which is also implemented. But what it does is it becomes a one copy paste line to install the thing. So for -d, if you're on Mac OS or Linux and you copy and paste that one line, there's only one other thing you have to do for -d to be fully working. And that is that you have to, if you're on Linux, well, either way, you need to have a volume where the blockchain is going to be stored. Because most people don't have 100 gigabytes free on their computer. And the Dash blockchain is approaching 100 gigabytes. You need 100 gigabyte volume. So typically you're going to deploy on Linux and you're going to attach a volume that's 100 gigabyte volume. So the only thing that you need to do, which can't be done automatically because you have to go in and select, I want to pay for 100 gigabyte volume in your service provider. But once you've mounted that volume, when you run the instructions on the screen tell you, okay, everything's installed, now run -d testnet install or -d hd install, and then it'll pop up with the, copy paste this, copy paste that, and then you're done. And it sets all of the RPC stuff. Everything is set up with best practices. And so that's -d is a little bit special because -d is really, 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 really old. And so there's a lot of things that have become best practice that unfortunately the default installation doesn't do. Normally in Webby, I try to stay away from that kind of stuff. I try to go completely vanilla, but because it's so dangerous to install -d vanilla, you have such a high risk of losing money and of, just
losing money. Losing money how? What do you mean?
Because the default installation does not use HD keys. So every key is generated individually. So, that's just super easy to be corrupted. Not it's so easy to back up, because with the HD, all you have to have is the 12 words. You print it out, you put it in your locker, and you're done. You're safe. But with the, if you don't have HD, which is what the original Bitcoin was, right, then it's generating keys all the time. If something gets corrupted, if an upgrade goes wrong, that money's lost.
Well, to be fair, it does backup. It does periodic backups. So if you are doing that, then you shouldn't have a problem.
And Jojo didn't lose $20,000 of Bitcoin with those backup processes, so I'm sure it's fine. No, I'll push back on that because I know I know that many people have lost money through the backup and upgrade process. Not on Dash specifically, but
Right.
in the Bitcoin client before the Bitcoin client added the HD keys. And Dash by default does not use HD keys. But anyway, that's a different thing. But when you install Dash D via Webby, all of the best practices are followed. So you get the config of Dash D that is the correct config. You don't have to go dig through the forums and figure out, am I supposed to turn this on? Do I need to turn this off? What do I need to set this value to? It gives you the correct config according to what is the best practice for installing Dash D.
Yeah, and other packages as well. So like going back to the GroveDB thing, like GroveDB is a pretty big thing according to Sam. Like I haven't looked into it personally. I'm not a super developer.
Database guy?
So I don't really have a specific need for it. But you, AJ, you run the Rust meetup here in Utah, and there are a lot of Rust developers here. So that's another example of something that I wanted to do this quarter is get GroveDB set up on Webby so that we could do a presentation about just GroveDB, the database, to the Rust developer group and see what they think about it, have them test it out, both maybe in a standalone environment as well as an environment with Dash. That's just an example of why I think it would be important to get Webby, GroveDB on Webby, whether that's the beta release or whatever. We can talk about that later.
Well, but in all of these cases, Webby is not a build tool. It's not a Docker. So in all of these cases, wish list item number 1 or 1.5 or 2, depending on how you want to order it, is there need to be releases. So right now, there's no releases for GroveDB. If you go to the GitHub page and you click on, and you can bring this up if you want to, but this is kind of the problem across the ecosystem right now, is that you go to the page for the project and you go to releases and you click on releases and it's empty. It has the notes.
No, it's not. It's not empty. I'm there right now. Dashpay /grove github.com/dashpay/grovedb/releases.
Yep. Click on releases.
Yep.
And it's empty. It's got the notes and there's no releases.
I see GroveDB version 1.0.0-rc.1.
Yep, and it says what's changed. It's got a list of things, and there's no actual releases.
Okay, so that's what you mean there.
So if you scroll down right there, see assets. There's no assets.
Are you? Let's see. Are you guys showing this? We should.
It's showing. Yeah. It's showing.
Okay.
Yeah. So the assets section is empty.
Okay. So yeah, that's definitely. I mean, that's an example of something where I would like that to be the way that you want it, because if it's the way that you want it, it's probably the way that some other developers want it as well.
Well, right now, there's no way to get this, right? If you were to tell someone, okay, go get GroveDB, what would they do? How would they get it? There is no place to download it. There is no release.
Let's see what it says.
Okay.
Let's pull it back up.
So so documentation needs to start with an install and then a usage, and at some point there needs to be a build section. And this is kind of like the philosophical document of like what was the motivation, what are some of the key concepts. So this is kind of like, as the person who is building this is building it, this is their kind of tool to keep track of their thoughts, which makes sense because it's something that's in progress. It's not production. It's not, but what a README needs to be is, the first thing in the README needs to be, this is the one line example or the one snippet of this is what the thing does, or this is how you use it, and then here's how to install it. Typically 1 to 3 lines of copy paste to install it, and then somewhere in there you have a build section for the people that want to do the build from scratch. Most people don't want to be Rust developers. So most people are not, they're not interested in, okay, in order to use GroveDB, I'm going to go install Rust. They just want, if it was useful for them, they just want to be able to click it, install it, because building can sometimes take hours. I don't know what it is for GroveDB. It's probably several minutes. It's probably not hours.
Okay, so I am seeing a usage section here. It's granted it's lower down the list, but if you just do a
It's
find,
empty. The usage section is
Did you
empty.
click through?
If you go back to, so Pete, you're on the releases page. If you go back to the top and you just click on the name of Grove DB at the very, 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 very top, dash pay Grove DB. Yeah, click on that. And then you scroll down about 3/4 down the page. There's an empty section called usage. You could just do Command F or Control F and type usage, and it would bring you there.
And if you go click on those links that say RS Drive and example,
And just hit enter a couple of times.
Okay, and click on which one? The RS driver example.
Yeah, and so the RS drive is empty.
Yep.
Okay. The example is not empty, but it's just for Node, which I guess is fine because maybe this is a database primarily for Node.
I don't think so. In any case, you're not seeing exactly what you want to see, right?
Yeah. So the example is empty. There's no documentation at the node one. The node one does have documentation where when I look at that, it's like it's pretty clear. They call the install section usage rather than calling it install, but whatever, typo. And then there's an example section. The example section is code that you could actually copy and paste and know what to do. So if we were to look at the Grove DB node, at the worst, this is what these readmes should look like. And this is not bad. This I'm not saying, when I say at the worst, this is what it should look like. What I'm saying is it should look at least this good. This is the bare minimum. It shows where the package is. It shows how to install it. It shows a fairly brief one-page example of how to use it. I think that this could be split into two, like a 5-line example of how to use it, and then the one-page example.
Now,
but this is good. I sent it in the.
Okay.
I just sent it on both.
If you flip back to the StreamYard, is Pete on the page that?
Yeah, Pete's on the right page. So this is good. This is what this should look like. Now, releases, because the way Node works, the releases are not here. The releases are on npm, but it links to where the releases are, and it shows the install command to get it from the releases. So this is the level, like this is the bare minimum level of documentation that any project needs to have. This meets that minimum level for sure. Like this, it's got a very small philosophy section. It's got the license on there. That's great. It has an example. I'm not exactly sure what this does or how, exactly how I use it, but it's got an insert and it's got a get. I get that it's a database. It's a key value store. It looks like. I'm not sure what the, exact proprietary features of it are that make it special or better than the other key value stores like Redis or whatever, but I could use this.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what I'm talking about. So this is what I want to start with. So I know that we, in the incubator, we did a lot of platform testing early on, like years ago, and it was, we were working. We had quite a few developers doing it, and then I deliberately took a step back from this because it was taking quite a bit of time to get anything done on platform because it was just bugs after bugs after bugs. Now that it is more stable, I want to get back to this and bring it to the developers here in Utah at least, and maybe do some meetup groups about some of these components and get some real feedback from people who have no idea what Dash is, and just like some honest feedback, like from the perspective of somebody that doesn't really that isn't vested in Dash per se, but might be interested in a new Rust database. So anyway, we'll talk about the specifics later, but that's I want to look deeper into this, into that example, for example, like doing streams about this and having meetups about this. So Anything else that you found out during your stream last night, AJ, that you wanted to mention?
Yes.
Okay.
So that the next item on my wish list is that some of you remember back in the 90s when you used to install something, it'd take half an hour, and you had to sit there the whole time because, you'd put in the CD and then it'd say, okay, click next, whatever. It'd take 5 minutes to load and then say, okay, well, what's your license key? So then you got to go put in your license key, you click next, you wait another couple minutes, and then it asks you about network settings. And then you click next, and you wait another couple minutes, and then it's like, okay, now set up your user. And then you click next, and then it goes for like 10 or 20 minutes, and then it pops up and it asks you a question about like some preference you want, and then you click next, and then you got to wait, and then it gets to the 99%, and then it sits there for another 5 minutes, and then you click next again, and then it asks you a couple more questions, and then you click finish, and you're done, right? And that's the process that we have right now with both master nodes and Evo nodes. And Evo nodes they have a few more of these things where what modern software, if you install something today, or you get a new Mac or you get a new Windows computer, it asks you everything up front. Like, do you have a license key? What's your username? What's your password? What's your Wi-Fi? And then you can walk away, and it's going to install for the next half hour, 45 minutes, hour. And when you come back, it's ready to use. It's done. There's no more steps. It asks everything up front. So my next wish list item is we've got to get all this key generation stuff. It needs to be pulled out into a place where you can generate all the keys, do all the assignments, do the ProReg, all of that without installing anything. I mean, there has to be a last step where you actually finally do the very last push to publish to the blockchain and have it test and confirm that what was registered is what is active. But other than that, I mean, it should be a two-step process in terms of user interaction. I input my information, I wait for the install to complete, and then I verify that that the signed message it's able to get back and reach those ports or whatever.
Yep.
So the BLS signatures, the HD generation, and this is a lot of what we've been doing in Dash Incubator with the Dash keys, Dash HD, the Dash wallet, the Dash sign, Dash TX, is so that we have tools that don't rely on downloading 100 gigabytes of blockchain. You can send money, you can sign things, you can broadcast messages, you can make a memo, you can look up a balance, and you don't need any gigabytes. You need 0 gigabytes of blockchain data to do those. So there's a few things we're still missing, which is actually send a ProReg TX. We already have the signing built out in Dash TX, and so the ProReg TX will go in Dash TX when we get that implemented. We need the BLS, because the BLS, there's only one implementation across the entire Dash ecosystem of BLS, and I don't even know if it's... I don't know where that's at. I don't know if we're using the right version, and BLS, unfortunately, is non-standard. Well, it has been non-standard crypto for like a decade, but they've come out with a new version of it that actually is in an IETF document, which is a Internet Engineering Task Force document. So it is on a standards track, but I don't know if we're using that version. And then we have a non-standard version of the elliptic curve ED 25519. That's its own bespoke version. But so all those things, those need to exist in a way that all of that stuff can run without having Tinder Dash built, without having Dash Core running, without downloading 100 gigabytes of blockchain, so that you enter in the information, everything's generated, everything's ready to register. Anything that can be pre-registered is pre-registered. It runs for 3 days downloading those 100 gigabytes, and then you come back to it, and then hopefully everything was successful and it's just working. There's no further interaction needed. But
I don't think it's 3 days, by the way. You were probably exaggerating, but I think it's less than 1 day.
It's not less than 1 day.
Okay.
If it's less than 1 day, it's less than 1 day by an hour.
But in any case, I like the idea of simple, easy.
Yeah.
give me three, 4 prompts right away, and then let me just walk away, and then send my dash when I need to. The easier that we can make setting this up, the better it is for everybody.
And I see a path forward to that.
Developers, yeah. So let's take that path, and let's get this thing bug free. Let's get it released. Who knows if it's going to be by the end of the year? But let's do in the incubator. Let's do everything that we can to help speed this process along, because we need to close this out.
I think we can get it.
Sounds really timely based on how I spent my weekend, which was not coding all night like AJ or assisting a sick child like Ryan, but rather I was attempting to bring myself up to speed with platform, because I really have not, basically, because of what I've heard is constant change. I have not really looked that much into it over the years.
I think a lot of people are in that boat. Yeah.
Even when making videos about it, I still didn't look that much into it. And so I found a great resource over the weekend. Probably nearly everyone had already seen it, but it was the first time for me seeing Joel's interview of Paul from Research. And my takeaway after watching that interview is that there are no end user features that I can pull out to sell platform with, right? Because
it's a developer tool.
I'm sorry. That's what Dash Detailed was about back in the day, right? It was, hey, like, what is cool about Dash that anybody can get excited about?
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm looking at platform, I don't see anything that's anybody can get excited about. This sounds like if there's anything to be excited about there, it's all developer level stuff. And that's great. That's probably exactly what we need. And so that it sounds to me like all y'all have your eyes on the right target here, which is this needs to be a get the developers here thing.
Yeah, you said you didn't see anything that anybody could get excited about. I think you meant you didn't see anything that everybody could get excited about.
That's what I meant, that everybody could get excited about.
Yeah, sorry. Because this definitely is a developer tool and a developer product. But hopefully, the hope is that it will enable user products from that.
Yes. And so, but yeah, we can't be putting the cart before the horse here, right? Like when I'm hearing these occasional calls around the community of like, we need more marketing. There's nothing to market about this anymore, right? Like 7 years ago, we could be like, we're going to have usernames, and people were like, oh, really? Right? And we could have said 7 years ago, like, we're going to have interest-bearing savings accounts and decentralized masternode interest-bearing shares. All these things everybody could get excited about and were marketable, mass marketable. But that's not the case anymore, right? I don't know how to market how GroveDB interacts with RocksDB. I don't know how to market freaking like Docker this or Merkle tree bridge, whatever.
Hey, Merkle trees are pretty marketable, all right? Calm down.
I think we're on the right, y'all are on the right track here, is what I mean to say.
Yeah, the developers do need to get involved first. That's the only way that, and it's not just developers, it's entrepreneurs also that see a product that the market needs, and then to engage developers to build those things. So it's actually starts with the entrepreneurs that have a good feel in the environment about what does the world need right now, and then they engage developers to build those things. And we're hoping that Dash Platform is a tool that will help with both of those people, help both of those people do that. So.
And that will also, I predict, solve our marketing issue, because those developers are going to be working for businesses in a lot of cases. And those businesses will market Dash for us, right? So I think a lot of the reason, myself included, that many of us in the past have been like, where's Dash's marketing? I don't see a banner ad for Dash on coinmarketcap.com. I don't see ads for Dash on Twitter or X or whatever. And this whole time we were thinking, oh, to have those things, the Treasury needs to pay for them. But I think if we looked at who actually pays for those ads of our competitors, it's not like the network itself, it's the businesses that sell their tokens or their services who are paying for the ads.
That's Ponzi schemes, though.
That's a deep rabbit hole.
They're doing pump and dumps. But I actually think that marketing needs to happen 100% of the time. There is never a time that marketing doesn't need to happen, because brand recognition is not... So there's the call to action, buy this, and then there's establishing trust. So I'll give the establishing trust example with dating, right? You go to something social like church or school or a club, and you go there and you see this person
really
all the time.
Utah, man. You go to something social like church. I'm just saying, that's a very Utah thing to say.
Well, I mean, no, that's not a Utah thing to say. I mean, like, most people have a community, right?
I hear you. Go ahead. Keep going.
Right? Other than San Francisco, people go to church. That's a normal thing. But
Sorry,
but anyway. But I mean, I've lived in other places. But the thing is, you have some place where you connect with other people, where you build your community, and you see somebody over and over and over again, and you become comfortable with them, having never had a conversation with them. You trust them implicitly, as opposed to, something pops up and you swipe right and they say it's a match. Like, you don't feel as comfortable with that as you do with somebody that you've never talked to, but you've seen over the course of a year. And that's what brand marketing is. Brand marketing is not a call to action. It's not, hey, let's go on a date. Hey, let's take some risks together. It's, I'm a stable, comfortable, acceptable figure in your space. And so branding needs to be happening 100% of the time, because people need to feel comfortable. I don't know what Dash is. I've never talked with Dash. I've never had an interaction with Dash, but I know that Dash is trustworthy because I've seen Dash online before.
Because I've gone to church with it every week for the past year and a half.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you're tying this in with even the GitHub documentation, AJ, like, for example, when you said that the references to Bitcoin or whatever at the tops of these things should be eliminated.
I'm pissed about that. Yeah, pull up the last link for the Tinder Dash link there. I mean, whoops, that didn't, let me try to paste that again. That one didn't paste right. There we go. So it's the same link 3 times over here.
You got to give credit where credit's due, though, AJ. That's, I think, what...
No, you hard fork, and you put the credit down in the bottom next to the license, saying credits. This was forked from X.
Okay, because, now what does it say?
All right, so scroll down a little bit, and you're going to see the part that just pisses me off. Oh, whoops. Sorry. No, that was the wrong one. Tinder Dash. That's Tinder Key.
So just change it to Dash?
So the link I just pasted 3 times in a row. I'll paste it a 4th time. I'm sure it'll help.
Will you paste it a 5th time?
Yeah, and I'll paste it a 5th time too.
Okay.
All right, yeah. So scroll down a little bit here.
Okay.
Oh, well, first of all, no, right up at the top. Right up at the top. So actually stay up at the top and zoom in. All the way up at the very, very tip, top. And zoom in. And see, it says forked from. What this means is we're getting no SEO or brand recognition. No, up on the left. All the way on the left, it says forked from. Zoom in on that. Control plus a couple of times.
I don't think it works on my machine. I don't think it works on my machine.
Command plus. There we go. Yep. So see that? It says forked from Tendermint. What this means is that when a web crawler like Google or Brave or DuckDuckGo comes to this page, GitHub is issuing a canonical link that says, hey, don't actually index this. It's not that important. What you should be indexing instead is Tendermint. And every single one of the DashPay and DashEvo repos is like this, where all of our SEO for what we're building and contributing from our hard fork, because it's not a soft fork, it's a hard fork, is all of that effort in branding is going directly back to someone else.
Does this is there a technical reason for this though? Because can you pull in upstream updates? I don't know if they're doing that.
Yeah, yes, you can. Wait, leave that up, Pete. You can pull in the upstream updates. This is this is a thing that we could fix tomorrow. This is super easy to fix. I've commented in a bunch of issues about this. I commented about it years ago. I've commented about it recently. I've bumped it. This is something super easy. Somebody just needs to go click a button so that it recognizes when a search engine comes to index this, it should index it separately from the other page. But we've got another problem. If you scroll down, and you don't need to zoom out, just scroll down, and you're going to get to the big image that says Tendermint. Right? Okay, so you can zoom out a little bit so we can actually see that. But this is every single one of our repos. They all do this. They all have someone else's branding on them. And yeah, I don't care that Tendermint created this. That's their fault for open sourcing it. If they didn't want to open source it, they shouldn't have open sourced it. We hard forked it. It's ours now. And our hard fork is for Dash. It's not for Tendermint. So we should not have Tendermint being the headliner, or Bitcoin or Bitcore or Bit whatever being the headliner for every single one of our repos. So we're losing all of our SEO because there is a technical SEO tag that is telling it, hey, don't look at this, go look at the other thing it's forked from. And all we have to do is click a couple buttons and that goes away, and then we start earning the SEO for that. And then the other thing is that, of course, we need to update the brand page, the pages. We just need to do a find and replace through the documentation and make sure that it is pointing to the Dash documentation, not every single link still going out to Tendermint or out to Dash, or out to Bitcore and Bitcoin and Bit whatever.
Yeah.
And we need to have our logo up there. We need to have our name, and the example needs to show not npm install Bitcore. It needs to show npm install Dashcore, etc.
So to bring this back to where we began, I think, with why we're doing this, BCG is extremely pressured to just get this thing done. So from their perspective, I think documentation and doing some of these things are lower priority. But if we can help get the actual product done, then I think they will be more than happy to help with some of the, pull in some of these documentation, which are important. They'll be.
That's just but backwards. You've got to. People have to be able to develop the product and build and install the product. You don't get to the end of the finish line and then announce there's a race.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see your point. Yeah, I see your point. I'm trying to make the counterpoint. But in any respect, in any case, I think it's ready to the point now where it becomes more efficient for Incubator to start putting more resources, which, by the way, is why I was encouraging, and I'm glad to see that Mikhail Shenmik he did pass as a Incubator strategist this quarter, so he's, I think, very focused on this stuff, and so I'm glad to see that he'll be helping with this. I'm going to be helping with this as well. I haven't lost sight, by the way, of some of these other things that I've been talking about in the past. They are still important, like the economic stuff. And I'm glad that the network did place enough trust that we're continuing to get funding. Last night, our proposal did pass, so thank you everybody for that. I did see several people change from no to yes, so I appreciate that faith and trust. And I think, unless there's anything else to say, we've almost gone an hour. So, closing thoughts from anybody?
Not from me. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Okay. So, yep, we'll get to it. And thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next week, right?